All right. Let's do this thing. Not yet. This thing is ticking me off. Mm. Okay. All right. Let's talk about momentum. Hey. Fup. Yeah, that's how I feel. Well, how are we gonna? Okay, yeah. How are we gonna talk about AMC, GME today? Honestly, I think we could pretty much knock it out in like 10 minutes. And I may not go that long, and my internet doesn't like to go that long anyways, so who knows? You guys are like 10 minutes, Booksy, you could never do that. You over explain everything. Yeah, to some extent, I think that's true. So here's the thing, and I'm gonna say this as clearly as I can possibly say it. Um, I don't know if you guys follow every ticker in the market that I follow, so it's gonna be silly to kind of assume that you do. But for the most part, I think people are aware of bigger drops and bigger moves and things like that. And one that's particularly interesting that happened recently was, and I think it's important to know that, important to note it anyways. One that happened recently was Beyond Meat, and Beyond Meat used to be this, like, they always say like it was the golden child or whatever, because people love riches to rags stories just as much as they love rag to riches stories. So they're gonna kind of make it whatever they were gonna make it. The truth is, if you look at the amount of shares that they had and the price of the stock, it's a pretty low priced ticker overall. I mean, it had like 70 million shares, and it was only priced at like $3 a share in the last 6 months or something. So small market cap, and it doesn't really matter. We could talk about opinions and publicity and all that stuff. What matters is that they announced that they were going to do an offering, and that offering was huge. Um, Huge. So that offering was going to be like 300 shares. And the thing is like they're going to be bringing their market cap, well, I would say their total shares outstanding from like 78 million to like close to 400 million potentially. And as a result, it just melted down. I mean, went from like 3 to 70 cents or something, right? So massive drop. And I have to think that when you look at something like AMC, and the fact that it's sitting at 3 and we're awaiting this kind of potential, I don't want to say an inevitability, but like we're awaiting this vote. The vote is inevitable, and that's going to be in December. I have to think that there might be a similar story there, and I don't like the idea of it. Don't get me wrong. But I do think that when you look at the chart overall, it's a very conflicting chart. It's easy, I guess, as a TA person to look at something like AMC and to say, well, it's just a hard chart. And therefore, it kind of excuses all the bad call outs, or it excuses this or that. Totally understand that. It definitely seems like you're minimizing maybe your responsibility to just chart it correctly. However, I think that the general consensus at times, and I'm talking about pretty broad spectrum, it's always sort of been a mixed bag for AMC, and I feel like that's true. Like there's always been bears, there's always been bulls. But at different times, the consensus has been, I think, it mixed in a way to where it's almost like, does anyone really have, that insider knowledge? Does anyone really know what's going on? I don't know if the way that we chart is going to ever be thought of as like the right way. What I do know is that I've been criticized at different times for the way that I chart, because people say, well, you don't need to do that. It's a mess. It's terrible. You should never have a chart that looks like this, that kind of thing. But over the last 10 weeks, I've got to try it out. And for 10 weeks, I've been day trading. It's actually been that long, believe it or not, since I started that quote-unquote challenge. This week is going to end up being a red week for me, probably. And I've had a couple other red weeks. My win-to-loss ratio has never dropped below 50%. It's going to end up being around 70% win-to-loss ratio. That means how many trades were wins, how many were losses. My biggest problem is that my losses are way too big. But the good news is that I have so many more wins that I've generally outpaced the losses. And I'll have final numbers for you guys in a little bit. But here's what I've learned. I've learned that when a stock has healthy liquidity, even if it's kind of like equally balanced, and frankly, even if it's not equally balanced, if it's like really red or really green, really bullish, really bearish, something like that, I've found that the methodologies that I've learned, the things that I've kind of been practicing for the last 3 years, they've yielded good results. Like, I'm hard on myself. I tend to downplay my success quite a bit, and I really do in my daily life. I tend to be pretty hard on myself. And I don't like having red weeks where I've lost like a few $100 or something. I want every week to be a green week, But a 70% win to loss ratio is really, excuse my French, but it's like really damn high. And I've been crapping on myself because I haven't like put it to the test. It's not long term. 10 weeks is 10 weeks. The market's been mostly bullish. There have been some pretty nasty rug pulls for a number of reasons. And it may be that we're kind of getting to the end of a rally, going into 2026. That was my expectation this past year. I didn't think that we would rally much past 2026. And that because if you go back to like pretty much any number of my videos, I talked about February 2026 a lot. Not just for one ticker or another, but like dozens. It was like this constant theme through the chart that we're kind of going into an up wave going into February 2026. But before that time or around that time, who knows exactly what it's going to look like. Somewhere around there, right, you might see a market downturn. And I've been fairly confident that 2026 could end up being a bullish year, but we probably would see correction. And it looked to me like most of the year, 2026 could be corrective. Maybe I'll be wrong about that. I have no clue. I'm not a prophet in that, there's no special revelation here from on high. That's not true. And I wouldn't claim that. I'm just looking at overall patterns in the chart and wave patterns specifically, how things move up and down, and the market kind of breathes at times in that way. And here's what I've learned. It's what I'm trying to say, is that I've been really hard on myself because AMC has been one of the most difficult trades to trade because it doesn't move up very often. And it has this very last minute, you're at the end of your rope kind of like, this is never going to move type deal. And I mean, and that's when it moves, right? It's like when sellers are completely exhausted, they've overstepped for a long time, and buyers have kind of given up, then it moves, and all of a sudden it like check boxes, right? And I'm sitting here, I'm charting other things, and I'm looking at other things, and this is AMD, right? Move down the alphabet a little bit. And AMD obviously had a huge bull run, okay? And I chart AMD, and I'm looking back here when it breaks out. I play the second part because I missed most of it. I missed the big move. The great part about it was Dan in the chat, he said something the day before this moved. He's like, what do you think of AMD? It looks good, right? And I'm like, yeah, I think it could go up a little bit. I didn't think it was going to do this. I thought it would go up to like, I think I had said not 290, but like 190. And it actually jumped up to like 200 that day that it went up. But I'm sitting here and I'm like charting it back here as it comes down. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to enter some plays. I enter a little too early, like usual. And then I kind of average down over here. And today it went up on the daily like 600%. And the thing is like the wave principles that I'm using here on like a pretty highly liquid stock like AMD, it's the same stuff that I use on AMC. So, and then I've used to help day trade for the last 10 weeks. And so I'm looking at like AMC and GME, and I'm kind of like in this place where I'm like, look, I think we're at the end of the rope, but it just, there's like, it keeps letting out. It just kind of keeps letting out slack. It's like you think that the rope is done, but it's really not. Like there's a little bit more slack. And then you think that's done and there's a little bit more. You're like, well, when does it ever stop? And I don't know if there's ever going to be like a perfect moment, but I can tell you that like catalyst moves that we're seeing coming were probably already priced in. And that things that weren't seen coming may have had a deep impact, like a deep impact on the way that it's traded in the interim between the end of the rope and like when that started. And one thing that GME had that very few other tickers have had was that announcement about that warrant. And it's still ongoing until like, the end of the month. If you got options contracts, they're probably completely destroyed. It's like 8 part 2, right? Nobody wants them. Mainly because those warrants give you the option to buy. It's like an option in and of itself. They give you the option to buy at $32. We're nowhere near that, right? We've kind of pushed hard away from it. The irony of it is that you're going to have this, I think you're going to have this massive slingshot. I really do. And I'm not sure exactly when exactly it's going to happen. Maybe the end of the month, maybe next week, maybe the week after next week. Like, it's just kind of like you're waiting for those moments to occur. And in the meantime, all I can really do is just look at the big picture and look at the small picture and say, is it doing something that's irrational? Is it changing character? Or is it just doing something that like delays time? For the most part, what we've seen over the last few weeks, 2 weeks to be precise, that's really been more of a time thing. And there's going to be people out there who tell me like, well, that's just, again, a way of minimizing that you were wrong about when this was going to go. But I know what an iteration looks like. And I also know that the market doesn't have like a set amount. It just